Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense, where we make some sense out of the nonsense, some of which I have created in the last couple of days, some of which I don't create, just life creates. Hey, we are looking this week at, I told you we were going to look at the 7 deadly sins, some of that, and it got sidetracked yesterday with don't or do, and part of that was because we were talking about that down here at the center today. But I want to look at Proverbs. I want to start right before God talks about the 7 deadly sins. And I want to start in verse 12 because the whole chapter has a whole bunch of relevant stuff in it, right? But in verse 12 talks a little bit about something that I want to challenge you with. So last night it was let your yes be yes, your no be no. Either do it or don't do it. One of those two things, right? But in verse 12 of chapter 6 in the book of Proverbs, it says this: worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech. I want to look at that for a second, because when we talk about the 7 deadly sin, we're talking about a lifestyle of sin, right? Again, when the Bible talks about sin, it's talking about a lifestyle of sin, right? Now, again, that doesn't excuse individual sin and say, well, I did it once, so that doesn't matter. No, God knows your intentions. He knows your heart. Sin is about God, meaning God deals with sin. God defines sin. God takes care of sin. You and I are accountable to whatever God decides is sin, right? That's how that works. So a lifestyle of sin, a crooked man, somebody who has become that way. Like a tree doesn't just immediately one day become crooked unless a tornado, something like that happens to it, right? And that happens in real life too. We have really good, godly people that something happens and all of a sudden they just go this way, right? But for the most of us, right, crookedness comes because it becomes a lifestyle. We start doing things, right? And we see the result of it. We like the result of it. Whether it's protecting ourselves, getting what we want, getting what somebody else wants, making people happy. But a crooked person, and then the Bible says a wicked person, they're the same thing, right? Wickedness, evil, corrupts. An evil heart corrupts a man, right? You start to become crooked in nature, not straight. Right? We've all seen that in our life. Bad thinking perverts doing, right? So all of a sudden, I'm thinking some way. Do you know how many times I deal with people who, they love somebody, they care about somebody, they're best of friends, but then something happens, usually up here. Usually something starts, some thinking starts, and it corrupts character. All of a sudden somebody becomes out of character. They become crooked in nature, right? The person who was a great friend, was there for them, an advocate for them, there at all the things that they needed them to be at. All of a sudden we start thinking differently about that person. We've given the enemy a foothold to develop crookedness within our life. Very rarely are you born crooked from birth. Now, get birth defects. That's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about internal crookedness, wickedness, right? But things start to happen and we start going this way, right? The trees that are in my little wooded area, right? They grow crooked because they're looking for light, and the light starts going this way. They're always moving, trying to find light. So they will literally move around another tree in order to find light, right? So we look at this and we say most people who are crooked in nature, they're just trying to find their way. And rather than following God's way, they developed a way to find their way, right? They're looking to be successful. Artificial light in nature. The enemy mimics everything God does. So God says he is the light. Jesus is the light of the world. God produces light, right? That light is to mark our pathway, help us to walk straight, right? But the enemy wants us to seek the light at whatever the cost. right? And so when we sit, we want the end result. So we don't care if it's a little crooked in nature. And pretty soon we start going a little bit and then we're way off track. So I want you to do this homework assignment for me tonight, right? Again, haven't gotten to the 7 deadly sins. Most of you have already looked them up by now, already know what they are, know what we're talking about. But I want you to think about this. Are there some ways in your life, are there some paths that are crooked, are starting to get crooked? You got some crooked thinking going on. The enemy's starting to put thoughts in your head about somebody, and when you were thinking them this way, right? Again, you understand it doesn't matter what a person does. You still have to love them. It matters what they do, but when it comes to love, you still have to love them. So somebody can do the worst, craziest, awfulest, terriblest things in the world to you. You're still charged with loving your enemies, not as defined by you, as defined by God. So when the enemy gets in there and he starts messing your thinking, that's what he's trying to go after. You understand that, right? He's trying to get you to break covenant with God and not love your enemies. That's the whole purpose. The whole purpose is so that you won't do that which God has commanded you to do. Therefore, the enemy gets authority in your life. He has accusational power. So don't buy these people that tell you that you have to love people, but you don't have to like them, and that you can't be around certain people and all these things. Don't buy all of that. It's from the enemy. Good people can be used from the enemy. Like, do you have to go be around all evil people and all this? No, you have to be where God has told you to be. That's the deal. Don't listen to your friends telling you to be somewhere or not be somewhere, dump somebody or not dump somebody, right? God's never going to tell you to dump somebody, first and foremost, in your prayer life. Second, probably actional. If you see that person on the street, God's not going to say, walk around them. He's not going to say, go hide from them, right? He is going to say, flee temptation, flee the enemy, right? That's important. But he's not going to tell you, right, things that go against his word, his nature. That's the beginning of crookedness, when we start listening to what makes sense by man. Again, God might be telling you to avoid some situations. God might be saying, hey, let me work on this while we work on you, and then we'll put it all together. We'll fix it. You got to listen to God. And the voice of the enemy can sometimes sound like the voice of those closest to you, because they're trying to protect you. They're trying to take care of you, but are they trying to help you love other people? So you got some crooked paths, some things that might be starting to go a little bit, some things that you know you're way, way far down that path, and it hasn't been very straight. All right? Chew on that. We'll see you next time. Nightly Nonsense.